Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who get us going for over 470 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogamespodcast. The dude of the week is Jade A. Thank you, Jade.
Thank you.
Your first dude of 2025. This episode comes out on New Year's Day. Maybe we'll release it like New Year's Eve in case you want to ring in the new year with our voices.
Yeah.
Deep in your ears. You want to fall asleep. It's sort of like making out.
It's ASMR making out. There you go.
It is. You know what I've noticed? Since we've started doing the podcast, I went back and listened to some of the older episodes. Our voices have slowly started to match each other over the last 7 years.
Dun.
And so it is sort of ASMR where we sort of sound just like dulcet tones, but we sound similar now.
Is that like the male version of sinking?
It is. It is. But we do it with like pooping. Every day around 11 o'clock, right?
Yep.
Okay, speaking of trends, we want to talk about like what did we learn over 2024? Because I think 2024 has been a year of tough lessons for those that got laid off and how the industry has responded to finally sort of cashing the checks that 2020 wrote. But also, I think heading into 2025, those lessons that the industry has gone through or that we have picked up on ourselves about the industry are going to inform trends definitely for 2025, but going into like maybe as far as like 2027, 2028, 2029, like, and I want to see, ideally, if we're still going in this time, if I have not died, how right we are.
Yeah. Time capsule it or whatever.
Yeah, and one of the, I think the easy low hanging fruit to talk about is especially with like Ubisoft clearly going through trouble. I think we're going to see less more walled gardens, but less like third party walled garden. Like Steam's going to go strong, but I think you're going to have less of the Uplay, less of the EA.
Yeah.
Epic will keep it just for Fortnite, but like I think you're going to see less of those individual storefronts because they can't have storefront exclusives and survive. And so I think you're going to see that
definitely.
go away.
And that really bounces to a feeling I had, which was, what did we learn this year? Exclusivity was a fool's errand.
It's gonna go less and less. I think there's
like for
still
some
exclusives, but
like some people, it was like they'll say it was successful or whatever. And the big three I'm talking about was like February, March, April, where you had Rebirth, Last Ronin, and Stellar Blade. Now, Last Ronin and Stellar Blade both say, hey, we met our expectations, our games did well. So it's like, oh, well, exclusivity was good for them. Kind of yes and no. I mean, the thing is that Last Ronin and Stellar Blade made the money they needed to make for their respective companies. I forget the name of the company in Korea.
But they also didn't do like gangbusters.
They didn't do gangbusters. They weren't selling. They're not selling like, they didn't sell like, for example, Last Ronin did not sell Ghost of Tsushima numbers. Stellar Blade has not sold, say, Nier Automata numbers, although Nier Automata was only exclusive to PlayStation for a week. But the Steam version was really borked, which would be the closest comparison I can give. But that being said, they're not for what is essentially, and I think people will try to say it's not the same thing, not that there's context there. I think essentially for the mass market, Last Ronin is it's a Sony PS5 exclusive that is, for all intents and purposes, basically a Ghost of Tsushima for their new system. Like it's the
Okay.
same general idea.
It's
And
definitely targeting the same audience, right?
right. And Stellar Blade is for all intents and purposes like a sort of near automata follow up. Maybe not, people will say, well, and I even say it, it's not really gameplay. They don't really play the same, but the idea, what they're selling you, the concept, everything is meant to evoke that audience.
Oh, so yeah,
Uh,
see, I would say like it's definitely targeting like a Bayonetta audience in my mind, but I also didn't play Stellar Blade, so it might not be what it looked
So,
like in the
it,
trailers.
well, either way, like they, those companies, Koei Tecmo and Shift Up, I think is what it is, who did Stellar Blade, respectively, said like it was that it did well for them. They got their nut right, but the big one was Rebirth, and people fought back and forth about whether or not until like Square just flat out came out and said it's not selling as well as they would like. Hi, Doug. Um,
Hi, Doug.
but and that was kind of huge. Where that was really, I know it's part two, but like that was really that was the meat of the 7 remake. That was like the vast chunk of the world and story and yada yada was supposed to be, and Rebirth was supposed to be that game. Rebirth was the game people wanted for decades.
Right.
And we've gone over all the reasons why, but the Sony bribe to make it exclusive for almost a year did not pan out for that game. So
Yeah, I
it's kind of,
definitely think that feeds a definite move where I don't think Square's gonna do exclusives like that
yeah,
anymore.
and it's not the only game to have that exclusive thing, because you remember, you already mentioned Ubisoft, where you had games like Avatar, and there were other, just generally any other Ubisoft game would be like Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, for example.
Right.
They would be on Uplay first, or they wouldn't be on, like, and they would have like a nebulous. Will it be on Steam? Maybe eventually, sort of. And that really cratered because Ubisoft cratered. And I think even by the time we got to Star Wars, I can't remember if Star Wars Outlaws launched on Steam day one, or if it went to Steam I think it went to Steam very quickly, um, after, because like the other ones were not doing well, and they've already. I think it's correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it went Avatar and Prince of Persia. Sorry. Were like Uplay and will come out on Steam eventually. And then Ubisoft just kept doing worse and worse and worse and worse. And then Star Wars Outlaws didn't meet those expectations. And then they said, okay, well, we'll get it out on Steam within a couple months, like no more nebulous year. And then they said Assassin's Creed Shadows will absolutely be day one on Steam.
Day one. Yeah. So this is also something that I vaguely remember is like it was within a month all of a sudden Outlaws was going to be coming to Steam.
Yeah.
And then now it's like the new Assassin's Creed will be on Steam day one.
Right. So I don't want to like make this entirely about like a Sony focused exclusivity deal, but it's like we saw the sort of death, in a sense, of exclusivity, because unless you got like a ton of money from Sony, which I assume Last Ronin and Stellar Blade did, or whatever, or just it was budgeted correctly, which is, you know,
Possible?
yeah,
Possible?
though. So I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, it was a disaster. It wasn't a disaster for Stellar Blade or Last Ronin, but I think if we're being fair, and we're being rational here, Last Ronin and Stellar Blade would have sold probably double, especially Stellar Blade. I feel Stellar Blade, if it came out day one on PC, it would have sold double what it has.
Well, this is the exclusivity dream. It's not even really a dream, but exclusivity going away as a tactic. Um, this also points to another trend, which this could be like a little bit crazier to say. And I'm sure other smarter investment people have said something similar, but like Microsoft's moving away from exclusivity, which means Microsoft might be moving away from hardware.
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest things ever, was basically Microsoft has basically given up on the console race.
So does that mean in 2028 you're going to have two consoles?
It's
Because 2020,
possible.
2027 or 2028 is about when we're expecting the next gen.
To be frank, though, if you want me to look 4 years, or really 3 years, 3.5, 3 to 4 years into the future right now, personally, on a very personal level, I'm not making an industry guess here. I'm just saying on a personal level. It's going to be harder to convince me to get a PS6 than it was to get a PS5. I got a PS5 day one because I never
Yeah.
got a PS4 Pro. And I was like, all right, cool. This will just this will cover both bases. Now I have zero intention of getting a PS5 Pro at all because so very little of the PS5 feels like it's been tapped into.
Utilized. Yeah. No, I
And really like I enjoy I enjoyed Horizon. I enjoyed God of War. I'm probably going to enjoy Intergalactic, honestly, and I'm probably going to love Ghost of Yote, personally speaking, which are still true exclusives, first party exclusives. However, the window for those games showing up on PC, assuming PC doesn't enrage me again to the point of me wanting to throw it out a window, I might just throw my hands up and just say and shrug it and say, eh, I really don't need a PS6. like honestly, I am personally, as of right now, feeling like the PS5 was this was a wasted console generation
well,
because
the
we still
first
have
3
games in
years, yeah.
2025 coming out on both systems.
Yeah, the first 3 years of its life, well, maybe 4 years of its life has absolutely been sort of pointless. But I think again that's, the result of 2020 coming back, COVID shutdowns and all of it. Like part of that is still we're seeing the effects of that. I think
Right,
2025 is
but
the
here
first year we're going to see where like is going to be the first year that isn't necessarily downstream, consequences
here's the problem though yeah, COVID was a thing and sure, but here's the thing: you laid off
oh
tens of
yeah,
thousands of people who are not making big games anymore.
right.
And I'm sorry, and games have not gotten cheaper or quicker to make. So you're not
I
convincing me that right now they've done zero to convince me a PS5 Pro is worth anything. Um, and just knowing that in 2025 major game releases are still coming out on PS4 and
right.
even Xbox One in some cases. So I'm very much like I don't really care. Like you've done nothing to convince me that this generation was even worth it. Because the thing is, I could still have just kept my PS4 trucking along. They would have been gimped, but I still could have played God of War Ragnarok. Could have played, Horizon 2. I still could have played like all Yakuza 8 and Yakuza Pirate, which is looking hot.
Well, this
Like
goes into another crazy, like, I don't know if this is necessarily true, but this is my own read and what I think is going to happen moving forward. I think console generations, they're going to move away from console generations as we traditionally know them, 7-year lifespans for console, and then you buy a new thing, more towards like the Apple or mobile style, where it's like, oh, every couple of years, the new version comes out. And
there
so
there was a
everything's going to move up, but it's
there
not
was a
going to be
fantastic
distinct
commercial about
innovations.
there was a fantastic. I want to speak to what you just said. There was a fantastic commercial. It was on YouTube. I skipped it, but like it was all these people lined up in front of what I assume is supposed to be like an Apple store, and they're like, "Oh, new phone coming out this year. What's new? I don't know. Who cares?" It's just like that's the mentality I think Sony and Microsoft and maybe not as much Nintendo, but they'd want it to if they could get away with it. They want to release a new console every year that has the most marginal of upgrades, but you still get people lining up to drop to $1,000 to $1,200 every single year to buy it. The problem is it's not a phone; it's not a utility.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's the goal of anyone doing anything in tech, but also just anyone in entertainment now is trying to figure out how to get people buying the new thing every year on the dot. This is the consequences of, moving to disposable technology rather than repairable technology too. They
mm,
don't want you to be able to repair anything because they want you to buy next product as soon as possible. It's, we saw that in probably as early as like the 360
mm.
where, they wanted you to be penalized for getting your 360 repaired. Now, granted, part of it was also that piracy was linked to repair shops in that era.
Oh,
But like,
JTagging your system, as they call it.
yeah, and it's like, okay, yes, that's true, but also I think it was a move away from being able to repair, if your disk drive broke, you could technically in like a PS1 or a PS2 put in a different disk drive. Like we know a person who swapped out their OG PS2 disk drive when their disk drive broke rather than go get a slim or whatever.
I actually, well, I modified a PS2 to play imports, which was, you know, honestly doing that, and I replaced my disk drive in one of my Saturns with an ODE. Like, yeah, that was actually feasible. You could,
Yeah.
if you could find a way. It's actually not that hard. It's some screws and a couple ribbon cables, and just make sure like the right power power and ribbon cables are going back to where they need. And it's just like, yeah, make sure you mount it and bracket it correctly.
Well,
You don't even have to solder anything.
fixing and doing anything used to be easily obtained information. They used to release manuals. Now lawyers for those companies sue YouTubers or fix it repair shops. They sue them to make it so that they can't repair.
That's so
Like,
scummy.
it's wild. There's this documentary, I think it's called I Fix It or something like that. Um, that's all about that. It's this guy who started a company in the early 2000s just repairing phones, repairing whatever, and he consistently has to go through frivolous lawsuits that are completely illegal to do these lawsuits, so they always get thrown out. But it's just lawyers from huge companies just trying to like shut him down from being able to release manuals on how to fix things yourself.
Shouldn't there be precedent eventually, though, legally? Like, hey, you're throwing this same lawsuit at me that's already been thrown out. Like, shouldn't the precedent be
Yeah,
like
but you still get to go before a judge to have it thrown out, so it still wastes a shitload of your time
in
and money.
taxpayer dollars?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that too. Nobody likes to talk about that, but when it's a company wasting taxpayer dollars, it's fine. Um, you know, there's there's probably a load of trends like that we're going to see, like movement away from disk drives. You're going to have nothing but digital.
Yeah, I think that's sort of like if anything, that's the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's what we're gonna because you're going to move away from everyone having their own distribution. I think you're also going to move away from all physical copies. And so you're going to have these weird walled gardens with like, oh, you own a Sony system. So basically you buy all of your games through Sony now.
Hmm.
You don't go to Walmart or anything like that.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing is like, how much the physical forever crowd? How long can they hold? How big are they? And how long? And how long before they even start dwindling from convenience? You
Well,
know,
how long until you know, company like Walmart uh figures out a deal to sell just a code like PC boxes?
the thing is, they kind of do.
Cause sort of, yeah, because you have to download it anyway.
Yeah.
But it's
They
like,
they they kinda you can actually go to Target and get game codes for games. Like, they're just
I
like
didn't
little.
realize they were already doing it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they're already there
right
now.
already.
But I don't know how but that's the thing, 'cause that obviously makes it really weird to, like, well, how do I package and wrap and give you a gift for your Christmas or your birthday or whatever? Um,
Gift cards is all you're gonna get. Yeah.
right? So it's like,
Sorry, kids. It's all gift cards this
well, here's
year.
the thing: the kids don't care.
They
Kids
don't
love
care.
it. Like, you give them Roblox bucks, or V bucks, and they're happy. Like, they'll ask for it. They'll ask for it by name. Give me Roblox bucks. Give me V bucks. Like,
I hate it so much, but it's true. Like, I wish that wasn't a thing. And I know when I was a kid, like gift cards. No, when I was a kid, like I liked getting a thing. I also liked being like genuinely like, oh, this is something I really love and had no idea I wanted or needed.
mm,
I don't know how to explain that because most of the time what I got from like aunts and uncles was just like clothes. You want to know? This is totally aside, and we already did the Christmas episode, but I thought of something post recording the Christmas episode. The weirdest thing that I would have, there was like a 10-year period where like aunts would just get me like larges, like size large clothing, like shirts from
yeah,
like
you'll
wherever
grow
they
into it.
traveled. Yeah, you'll grow into it. And I never grew into it. Right. And then now I am moving up to large, you boys buff. Okay. But I'm moving into larges. And so My mom just sent me a box of all these Christmas like
Like,
t-shirts and stuff from like Hard Rock Morocco or wherever. Like she was like, yeah, it just felt wrong to like throw them away. So I have all these brand new shirts. And you know what I've noticed? Shirts from the 90s are better made.
oh, I'm sure
Just
they
like
are.
random t-shirts are just like overly like they seem overbuilt and really thick. And these are just like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
random, and now I'm wearing them because I need to wear my aunts were right. They were 20 years too late, 25 years too late, but or too early, but I grew into them. Like, and I'm wearing shirts for things that don't I was wearing an Italian uh like racing shirt that one of my aunts got when she did a Grand Prix in Italy when she
Oh
like went
my god.
traveling one year when I was like 8 or 9 or something like that. And so I was wearing this shirt and like someone, it was a conversation starter. They were like, "Wow, where'd you get this Grand Prix like sure?" I was like, "I am not into it. I just like I'm trying to go through these shirts so they don't go to waste." And now I'm getting into conversations about like I should get into like racing.
Hey
Like
man, big in Europe.
Formula One racing. Well, it's getting big here too. I guess I
Well, they're
should get into Formula One.
trying. They're
They're
trying to make it big here. It's not going super great, but
yeah, that's fair. Anyway, weird aside, but yeah, no, if we're talking about like lessons that we've learned in terms of like industry hard, let's talk hard lessons. Layoffs. The layoffs that happened, direct result of the mergers, but also maybe overconfidence on Microsoft's uh account. Are they done?
no.
Right. They're never really going to be done, but is there still going to be this huge is there going to be cuts because of mergers? Yes. I think there's going to be more mergers. One, we've already talked about this in the past. I think Ubisoft's maybe on the chopping block, maybe going to get bought.
Yeah, there's all kinds of talk about how they're basically selling to Tencent.
Yeah, like that's probably who they're selling to.
Like
Um
Ubisoft had the most number of studios of any, major third party company in the world, and
and Tencent's not going to keep them.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Um
Well, they already shut down a couple. The X Defiant office is in San Francisco, and then
that's gone, yeah.
there was one in Japan. They shut down. I think it was Osaka or something.
Osaka. Yeah.
So, and then apparently, like the X Defiant people, they just pushed everything they had in development. They just dropped it into the game like this week. And they have like this really like kind of like sad, morbid like
Wow.
title screen now. They're just kind of like, well, here's everything we were working on. Just here, whatever. Go ahead, play it. But apparently it's even worse. Like they even took the game. Not only did the game get taken off the shop, you can't even re-download it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can only play it for another, I think it's going to go for a year if you already own it. It's going to like the servers are going to be up until next year or something like
Yeah,
that.
something crazy like that. And a lot of people were like, that's not even fair because Avengers is still servers are still up for some reason.
Well, they got that Marvel money.
I guess, but
They got that Marvel money, and Disney has proven one thing and one thing only. They like to burn money. Ooh,
yeah,
they
because
like to
I
burn it.
mean, because I was gonna say, I think we kind of saw the death. We saw the death of gas games like really hard this year with certain with
Mm,
like multiple major failures. Most of which you just don't even know, but like X Defiant being one of them.
yeah.
Obviously the big one is Concord, and people will say, but Marvel Rivals is doing so well. And I'm like, I
It is the exception, not the
there
rule, it seems like.
there's still something about that though because Marvel Rivals is free to play. It's very easy. It's not a huge download. It doesn't require an account setup. And here's the crazy thing. Anecdotally, all the hours I put in, all the hours and time I put in, I have seen very, very, very few bought skins because that's the only way they can make money in the game is to buy is cosmetics. Everyone's running default, like very very few, and the ones that are either this was a handout from the beta, this was an event you could earn it for free, and you can earn doing like dailies and stuff. You can earn enough to get certain costumes without spending money. So the only people I've seen who are actually spending money on the game are the really big sweat lords, and
The whale. Yeah, well, I was reading an article analyzing like what they think like the size of the industry is going to be in the future, and they're saying like, oh, by 2030 it's going to be 4 billion. There are going to be 4 billion gamers, but 10% of gamers account for like 65% of profits in the gaming industry right now.
Right.
So if that holds and you get more live services games, which is or the free to play games, which is the biggest draw of bringing the massive expansion, mostly kids who don't have money to spend to play these games, does that mean that are you going to draw in, is 10% of that expanded audience going to be whales? Like, are
Right.
you actually going to grow that 10%, or is it going to be in the future 8% is going to float,
Well,
60% of
the
profit, like
thing
that?
I'm sort of just is sitting here like questioning. I'm like, is Marvel Rivals making a ton of money? It's got exposure.
Yeah.
Exposure's good. And it's kind of got the goodwill because of how non-predatory it is. And that's all great. All of those are good things. But again, there's part of me that I'm just like, I've been sort of like, am I a doomsayer? Well, I am a little bit. Am I a doomsayer? But yeah, I'm kind of sitting here thinking like Disney takes so much money out of their collabs, and this thing being so fair, and I'm just not seeing a ton of people playing as bot cosmetic skins. I'm not seeing a lot of that like
Right.
around. I mean, maybe it's way more prevalent in like the competitive modes or whatever. Because again, anecdotal. That's what I, I don't know 100%. I have no metrics to gauge it on. I'm just saying
Right.
like
We're not
everything
going to
I've
get
seen.
numbers for that for another few months.
Right, everything I've seen from the hours I play is like not a lot of people are playing unique skins. Everyone's just kind of playing the free defaults.
Yeah, and I wonder, it depends on what skin packs come out and what, here
Yes.
I haven't played it yet, but I was talking to actually one of the dudes who is playing, and his commentary on it was kind of like, well, if they actually delve deeper into, like, are they just going to do the tie-in characters, or are they going to delve deeper into characters from other comics that aren't necessarily from movies
They
currently?
definitely they already have a bunch of weird deep cuts in the
Right,
game.
yeah, so
So
it's like he's already happy
yeah.
in a lot of ways. So it makes you wonder, like, how much are they planning on this to stand alone, and how much are they planning on this to be a tie-in moneymaker? Well, I don't know, like,
Probably a little column A, a little column B,
right,
but again,
Marvel movies and shows that come out over the next year, if we start seeing characters being installed into it, you know, for whose benefit is it? Because
yeah.
Marvel Rivals is, like, big enough that they think it's gonna boost the movie, or is it the movie is gonna
In
boost Marvel Rivals?
And I had a conversation last night too, and I think as well. Again, people will be mad at me because I'm enjoying the game and playing the game and having fun with the game. I'm just worried. I'm more concerned with the longevity of this, even to myself, where it's like there's 3 areas in the game right now, three, and that does not for a lot. That does not make for a lot of maps or a lot of map variety.
How long does a round last in Rivals?
20 minutes, 15, 20.
Oh, okay.
Can
That's
be very
longer than I
fast.
thought.
It can be very fast if you're getting if you're dominating or getting whooped. It can go way faster,
I For
but
some
a-
reason
but
I
a
sort of
general tug and pull is like in the 15 to 20-minute range.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was sort of worried when we first started seeing stuff for Marvel Rivals that it was going to be like essentially a mobile game, like where it's just very, I don't know, not cheesy. Cheesy is not the word, but basic,
Hmm.
like hyper basic.
It's
And I
it's
know
just
that,
it is just Overwatch.
yeah. But at the same time, like Overwatch is complex enough that you can get good. You can put time into it and get good at it.
Yeah,
There's some games where it's just like, yeah, okay, it's an Overwatch clone, but it's like there's not really any getting good. You just sort of
there's fun stuff in the game. There's destructible walls. The environments are destructible, and some. And there's team up where like if two characters are on the same team, they actually get buffs,
oh, cool.
and stuff like certain buffs or certain like perks that they don't get otherwise. So kind of trying to like encourage team synergy stuff. So it's got good stuff. I'm just like, wow, and it has a ton of characters. Like it definitely it did the thing. I think it's doing everything that it should do right off the bat, which is here's a ton of characters and they look great and like really lack of predatory practices. All that's good, all good stuff. Their levels do look good. It's just that there's like three of them. There's just like a Thor level, and then there's a Black Panther level, and then there's a Spider-Man 2099 level. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. But if they're going to be updating every month,
We'll see. Well, I mean, yeah, like 'cause to me, I'm like right now, like your roster's great. Don't worry about the roster. Just get some maps in there.
yeah.
Because really, time is money and whatever. Because Monster and people say like, oh, there's not going to be crossover. I'm like, Monster Hunter Wilds is coming, and that was a huge selling game, and I think the
Right.
next one's going to sell huge as well. And it's going everything is a competition for your time in a sense. So, and I think that like kind of goes back to something else we learned this year. And that is Sony is just scumbags. That- that's what I've learned because I'm going to go back to because I'm talking about rivals. Let's talk about Helldivers 2, a huge success, right? It was was a $30-$40 game, so you didn't have to pay a lot to get it, but it's definitely a gas game. It's a live service game, also with really really nice non-predatory practices. And then Sony, within a couple of months, decides to fuck over hundreds of countries, like 100 plus countries, by randomly implementing a PSN account login, which can't happen in many, many, many countries around the world. The pushback is so severe that even Steam is basically like forcing refunds upon Sony. So Sony goes, okay, you don't need a PSN login account, but we're taking it off the store in those countries because going forward you will need it, but for now you do. For Helldivers 2 specifically, and the thing is that people think because Sony backed down and just allowed people to keep playing it, that like, oh well, they learned that. No, they effing didn't, because every single game forward just put a disclaimer and said, okay, you need a PSN account to log in to play this, like Ghost of Tsushima multiplayer. They basically just stopped selling Helldivers 2 in the other countries, so it would basically became this, I hope you got it while it was hot.
Well,
And
part of the problem is that Helldivers wasn't even supposed to technically be on sale in those countries in the first place. Apparently, like apparently that was they had already screwed up.
well, and again, going back to the whole thing was that like, well, this was always the plan. I'm like, then why did you sell it in countries that didn't have it?
Right, they already screwed up. They should have known already. They shouldn't
Like,
have bothered.
but again, and also, what are you getting out of this? Metrics, data, or whatever, like numbers, Mason, so that we can have so many people having a PSN account. What an asshole-ish, scumbagish thing.
They
Like,
sell all that info.
of course they do,
They
which
compile
is
it and they use it to sell to marketing industries.
what makes them
Yeah,
scumbags.
yeah. Well, I think
Like,
all that's scummy. If you're like, oh, why do I have to make an account with Ralph's or Kroger or wherever stuff? They sell that. They turn around and they sell that information to scrapers, basically, who then sell that information to the companies that want to call you and do robocalls and all that. So they buy all that information from these like spam emails that you get.
yeah,
It's like they do that to the government. They sell that information to the government. ISPs do it too.
yeah. So
Like like if you're worried about what Google knows about you, your ISP collects all that info now. Now, see, there was this beautiful point in time where basically up until like 2010, say, that none of that information really was tracked or used, and they didn't really understand the value of it. But post 2010, really maybe a little bit earlier than that, but post 2010, where all that stuff started getting tracked and sold and used, like to build a picture of you specifically to target you for ostensibly products, like all that stuff. Like there was a wild west at one point of the internet where like you could learn how to build a carburetor. Like you could just Google and find out how to rebuild a whole car from some forums and YouTube videos and stuff. And there was a beautiful point of the internet where there was actual anonymity. There is no anonymity on the internet anymore. It does not matter what you believe. It doesn't matter if you put your little anime avatar and else, you are
yeah,
not anonymous. They know who you are. They being your ISP and various other companies like Google. You're just And it's only going to get worse. That's another trend we can talk about. Your information is going to be even more heavily tracked going forward. For instance, your motion, like they want to implement eye tracking on consoles. That was a thing that they talked about way back with the Connect. Oh, it's
Mm,
going to do eye tracking and stuff. And then people raised some red flags where they're all like, well, is that good? Because that means it's scanning your face every few seconds and stuff. Yeah, well, that stuff all stayed. Your phone tracks your eyes. That's what the face scan, like your phone. You are
yeah.
Here's a fun little weird little experiment. Like when you have your phone out in front of a dog or a cat, and you've noticed that the dog or the cat will look at you because they know it's because your phone pings an IR light basically from both sides, like the front facing camera and the back facing camera, every few seconds to learn about its environment. It is constantly scanning, and your dog can see that, and it is annoying as hell. So when you go to try to take a picture of the dog might freak out or look away or look directly at you, or because you're basically shining a flashing light in its face. Like they want to do that, but with gaming consoles, probably on the next Switch. Even actually, Nintendo might be the only company that doesn't want to do that. That
Because they
has
don't.
no real.
They just don't care.
Yeah, they don't care about that avenue for profit. They don't. Nintendo is highly protective of letting anyone make money off of what they view as their customer base, and
Yeah.
for better or worse. And I honestly, in this case, it is better. They just won't share any of that information. Nintendo might be the only company that you can give your email to that they won't give it away purely because they don't want anyone else to be able to profit off of what they think is their work.
Which is
If
a
only everyone was so greedy.
a really weird like Japanese old business mentality that somehow works in your favor in a way.
Yeah. And I got to be honest with you, I'm here for it. I wish there was more stuff like that. More traditions like that.
But yeah, like that was a big lesson we learned was like Sony was, and people will say like, but Astrobot was such a love letter. I'm like, Astrobot was as we was a beautiful love letter. But we both kind of like can look at it. We can look at who's in charge, where they're in charge, where they're living, where the decision making. And I'm like, this was a game that went under their radar for the most part. They just
Yeah.
kind of like they kind of announced it like this year and as hey, it's coming out in September, and it came out and it this game did really well. This was a game Sony as a corporation was not really paying attention to.
It very much feels like the executives just had no idea. They didn't think it was going to be a big hit. They didn't think like it almost feels like they thought this was going to be a blip and someone complained enough to get it made. you know and now that it's a big hit, a lot of people are like, oh, so we're going to get more games like that. I actually don't think so.
No.
I don't think, at least not in the next couple of years, we're not really
Here's
going to see.
another thing too. Yeah, people were saying like, is this actually gonna like, is this gonna bring back 3D platform? 3D platform was coming back now. I'm like, well, bro, like, why are you asking this now? Because Sony released one, but it's like Mario games keep coming out. It didn't
Yeah.
do anything, out, in the major gaming space. Ratchet and Clank still exists, but
And to
again,
be clear, I would love it if this meant a shift in the industry as a whole, but no, I don't think. I mean, Sony is in the game of tentpole, big budget, blow your mind single player games, and
yeah,
frankly, that is why I, opposed to you, will probably get a PS6. They're still the guys doing it. If they weren't doing it anymore, if PS6 didn't seem like it was going to have tentpole big budget stuff,
I mean, I think it will, but like
but
for
it'll also come
me,
to Steam.
for me it's like it's gonna come to Steam, and then what computer will I have at the time that will probably run the game just fine anyways,
Right.
or how bad, really, how bad is it gonna look on a PS5?
No, that's also true. I think at least for the first few years of the PS6, especially because the PS5's been so underutilized so far. Yeah, I think it's possible that the PS5 could run it. The thing is like I still like console gaming enough that like I would prefer to do all of my gaming on a console, to be
Yeah.
honest. Um, but PC is, in a lot of ways, one, I can just play more games on my PC, generally speaking.
Mhm.
Um, and also PC gaming with a controller has gotten so much better. Like remarkably better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we
So
remember the dark days.
yeah, where you had to map the controller yourself if you wanted to be able to use a controller at all, or you had to have third-party software running.
Yeah.
My God. I tried to do that for the original PC port of Beyond Good and Evil. Oh, oh, so bad. It's the worst gaming experience I think I ever had. And now I think it has controller support anyway if you get the Beyond Good and Evil
Yeah.
re-release or
HD
whatever.
remaster or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely do that. Don't get the original PC version because I don't think it has controller support, or if it does, it's god awful. Um, although a weird trend, by the way, talking about the you know the pursuit of mobile technology as the framework. Every year a new
Yeah.
PlayStation, new. Uh, I do think that might be the direction they go with like portable gaming because we already know that all the big three are. Nintendo obviously, but now Microsoft and Sony have plans in place to go back into portable more
Yeah.
along the lines of the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck and stuff.
There's a weird thing about about where they're gonna go with that because Steam sellers Valve said we're not doing a Steam Deck upgrade until enough time has passed.
Yeah, but Valve's an outlier in almost always.
Yeah.
Like, can you think of a company that was as dominant as Valve was for as long as Valve was that did basically nothing like Valve did? Like they were basically like, we're just making a lot of money. Why work? Like, why do anything else? Why make games? Why keep innovating? Rest on our laurels for a bit. And you know what the thing is, it worked for them. I don't know what it was like to work at Valve in that decade where they really kind of were just doing whatever they want. Um, but I bet it was the most chill, comparatively speaking, anyway. Uh, you know, they're the only company I can think of that when they go like, yeah, we're not going to release a Steam Deck 2 until Steam Deck 1 just absolutely is dead. And you're just all like, yeah, that's good business. Like they should what? What do you mean you're not going to release a Steam Deck 2? Uh it's sort of why like okay, the Switch 2 is coming out. They're going to be 3 years in advance of the other two guys coming out with their next gen, just like they did with the Switch, which is what's
Right.
going to give them the advantage, say.
But granted, power wise, the Switch 2 is going to be far behind whatever
But yeah,
anyone else comes out with. But therein kind of is the weird thing. I'm hyper curious what happens with the next Switch on a financial level because what does Nintendo do to convince the mass market? Because the first year or two doesn't matter. They're gonna get 10 million people buying a Switch 2 in the first year.
the
That's
Nintendogs.
it's not even a question. Like they're gonna sell initially out the gate. The thing is gonna be sell gangbusters,
You're right.
no problem. I'm talking about like because we're at like 50, 60 million people have a copy of Mario Kart 8, right? 8 Deluxe on the Switch. What does Nintendo do to convince the 100 million people to upgrade? And you need this new Mario Kart. You need this new 3D Mario,
Right.
whatever. What is the carrot? What is the carrot on the stick that Nintendo does to get the mass market to go? You need to upgrade. You need this new one.
I had the weirdest little idea the other day where I was just thinking about like how cool would it be if the Switch 2, if it's even called that, the Switch 2 had Nintendo specific upgrade features sort of like the Rumble Pack, sort of like the N64 had the
Mm,
booster, like if they frame it that way so it's like, "Oh, you want a SSD on your Switch 2, you get the Nintendo SSD that is Nintendo branded." And so I actually sort of think that's the hook they'll have because Nintendo Switch owners are vast majority casual, but like they're devoted to Nintendo, a lot of them.
yeah.
Like Nintendo has like a devoted following. Yes, you could probably mod your Switch to do all sorts of things, but most Nintendo owners would wait for an official Nintendo whatever, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And part of me is like, oh, if they made the next Nintendo Switch something that they plan in 2 years to release an accessory that upgrades the hardware some, I sort of think that that could be the hook.
I don't know.
I
It's
mean,
hard to
they
say.
build in plug and play in a way,
I don't
like
know.
a RAM extension or a, you know, you get what I'm saying though. You understand
Yeah,
where I'm
but it's
coming
hard
from.
to it's hard to imagine if they want would they want to go that route? Would they want to splinter,
I
you know,
it's
the splinter their user base? Because I mean, it would have to be something where it's like, well, it can run with or without, you know.
yes. Yeah, no, definitely. I I don't think they're going to do like a Switch Pro.
Mm.
I don't think they're ever going to want to get into the Switch Pro, or the Pro console gamut or gambit rather that, Microsoft and Sony have been
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
But they might do like oh, you want like a little bit better performance, here's a booster for blah blah blah.
The real question would be: would it be something that would attach to the unit itself, or would it be like a something that attaches to the dock? Now, I would think like, well, the dock would be easier and make more sense, but Nintendo thinks so portably minded. They probably want it to be something that attaches to, say, the back of the new system or whatever.
Yeah, like if you have an expansion port slot in the back already that has a cover on it, and
Well,
then
they've got a USB-C on the top and bottom now, so
right, but you would want it to be something that could be flush.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like like where the kickstand is, like you have another, slot there that's covered. And
Hmm.
then you got 2 years of people being like, "Well, what is this for?" And then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, here's this little memory stick you can," and it's
Yeah,
a RAM boost or a
yeah,
internal
maybe.
SSD or whatever.
I'm just really curious. I'm like, what do they sell? What do they sell a new Mario Kart on? Because of how many courses and characters are in Mario Kart 8. I'm like, and the other one is like, how do you get people to buy new Smash Brothers? Like, what are you gonna do after that? I'm like, you because you painted yourselves into a corner with that. I feel like Animal Crossing was like, oh, what a great game. You know, how are they gonna get people to buy new Animal Crossing? I'm like, bro, Animal Crossing left so much untapped potential. The fact that they just kind of left it with like one major DLC and then didn't do it. There's so many things they could do and add and put into, say, a brand new Animal Crossing. It was like Animal Crossing has, sky's the limit of all the things they could add and improve and just throw more stuff in and just it'd be great
Right.
and people love it. Mario Kart, you could at least say like, well, let's start throwing lots of not just Link and a squid. Let's put like a lot of Nintendo characters and Nintendo courses in there. Like they go Smash Brothers with Mario Kart. That's a way you could go. Smash Brothers, you're doomed. Like there's nothing Sakurai can do that will ever topple Ultimate because he painted himself into the biggest corner IP licensing corner
I
with
think he
Ultimate
did
that
that
I'm
on
like,
purpose because he's done work, he doesn't want to work on it anymore.
but he has to because they're going to make another one and he won't be able to not he won't be able to stay away.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that at the time he believed he could stay away. I I think Mario Kart going the way of Smash, where they just like do a Mario Kart Ultimate, I do actually think is what they'll do if they do another Mario Kart. Who knows? 8 may be the
Yeah,
last one we ever get.
because all
Just
the
continuously
leaks
re-released.
all the leaks that we've been seeing coming out for the new system um are that it looks exactly the same as the old one. It's a little bigger and there's a C button
Right.
underneath like the home button. Well, what's that? I'm like, my guesstimate. Here's my, if I was just to just say, well, what do I think the C button is? It connects. It connects to smart TVs. It connects to phones. It's screen shares. It's screen
Right.
shares or it's screen splits. Kind of similar to what the Wii U could do, where you could put what you're playing portable on the TV without a dock. It could turn the
Connect to
system on,
other switches
connect
easier.
to others. It could dual screen. You
Yeah.
could, you could be playing it portable. You press connect, and it finds the TV, connects to your smart TV, and then now you have a dual screen handheld thing. Like that's my guess.
Yeah, I think
I,
that
I
that
have no other. I have no other thing. Or maybe just connects to their new version of the Miiverse. I don't know.
yeah, it's probably just a dedicated you know, Bluetooth is probably not the technology, but like a dedicated Bluetooth search button. Rather than going into a menu, you just hit the button and it can connect to another switch or to a whatever real fast. That
Right.
that actually seems on brand. like if they do like a the same little click deal instead
Mhm.
of the snap.
Well, we know
Yeah,
it's magnetic. We know it's like, there's like a button, like you pull it apart now and it snaps magnetically. Like we know where they're leaving the slide rail. Um,
makes
or
sense. That's
so
probably where they got a lot of breakage. Yeah.
yeah, well, so yeah, like if we learn anything, we learn Nintendo is we didn't really learn anything from Nintendo. Nintendo's how they've always been. They're stubborn, obstinate. Like
Well, we've learned
everyone in
that
there,
they understand the market a lot better than the other two.
in a way, because they're
They've
just like,
they've
well, there's
proven over the
still
last year or two that they truly understand the market way better than
in
than
a
the other
sense, it's kind of like, look, man, like we just you don't need to keep trying to reinvent the wheel here. Like there's money to be had in what people already own.
and a lot of money. Not just like Nintendo's not by any means treading water. Like they're they're doing good. It,
Yeah, I mean, the things are kind of like slowly going down from their peak, and especially with COVID, where they made a ton of money when people bought it, had Animal
well, but
Crossing.
that's everybody. Look at Netflix. Look at like
Well,
literally everybody in the entertainment
the
industry.
difference is that everyone else went like boom, cratered.
Yeah,
When 2022 rolled around, everything's just like, oh no, things are bad, and Nintendo's just kind of like very slow decline because they didn't explode, they didn't over hire, overcompensate, do everything. Oh, we're making so much money. Let's put all these projects into motion. It was just kind of like, nope, okay, that's great.
well, Nintendo being the only century-old company, maybe they were the guys that they don't do anything fast. They don't do anything reactive. Actually, that might be one of the biggest lessons of Nintendo ever is they've never been reactive ever, and for good or ill.
They kind of were reactive with the Switch. To
Really, you think
let's
so?
to be oh yeah,
I
definitely.
think
'Cause
they did that whole blue water thing. They went off on their own. Like,
the Switch was, I think, fast tracked because
oh,
the Wii U
eh,
died so hard. They're like, well, we can't keep this going for 8 years.
I
'Cause
mean
remember the
reactive. Like the market didn't make the decision for the Switch for like they didn't go like everyone's into handhelds. We got to get a handheld out. Like they
no,
decided
no,
to
no,
do a
no.
hand.
Like
Like they aren't reactive to the
no, that's it. Well, yes, in that sense, you're absolutely right there. Where it's
yeah.
like the Switch was not a market reaction. It was just, oh, the Wii U is not going to sell, and there's really nothing we can do
Right.
about it. Think of something else. you know,
Yeah, when I say reactive, I don't mean that they can't think on their feet. They do, or they don't. They react to outcomes that they have. But what I mean is like if Microsoft and Sony are now talking about doing handhelds in reaction to
in
how well the
reaction
Switch did.
to yeah, the Switch itself.
They don't have
Where
they haven't had a unique idea. It's just head empty apparently for the last 7 years. And so like
Sony's always been a Xerox to Nintendo, though.
well, yeah, that's why they exist. Like the PlayStation exists purely because of Nintendo.
Right.
Um, but like Microsoft at one point did have its own ideas, its own goals, its own, it seems like now they're being extremely reactive. And that's
Well,
a bad place to be. And I'm not saying that this is Phil Spencer's fault necessarily, but he has been reactive his entire tenure.
well, the other thing too is like I feel like Microsoft is just trying to figure out where they even belong, I guess, at this point,
Or
because
if they even
now
care anymore.
well, that's the other thing is that there's a part of me that's like, when does the greater whole of Microsoft basically just decide, yeah, this isn't worth it? Here's the crazy thing though. Like if we look at the metrics for say November or whatever, and the only growth in the video game sector came from Game Pass because of Blop 6. Um, granted,
That is interesting, but
now
also
my
sort
now,
of expected.
but don't get me wrong here. Like Microsoft is not doing good hardware. Like their hardware is tanking. It's down year over year. It's down like 20 something percent, almost 30% year over year for the month. Um, their hardware ain't moving. It's not going anywhere. It's not doing anything. But like the only one who had like a slight blip was Sony because PS5 Pro came out in November. So you had all those people rushing to hopefully scalp. Nintendo was down like 2 or 3% for the month of November, which is kind of insane considering they had Mario and Luigi Brothership, but a Mario and Luigi RPG spin-off game, whatever. That's not like It ain't Zelda.
Right.
Mario Party did more for them. Mario Party Jamboree's done more for them than Mario and Luigi. So, granted, that came out like late October. So it's kind of interesting that Nintendo didn't really have a huge, big holiday presence. Like we have these big game for the holidays. They're like, nah, Mario games.
One weird thing, this isn't a trend, but I think it's a lesson that Microsoft could learn if they wanted to, is like they should start looking at what they want to do with the Xbox. Like what does Microsoft want out of the industry, and like sort of how Nintendo was all like, oh, we want to go back into the portable space. We want to just, go our own way. What's the their own way that Microsoft could go? And part
Well, the
of me
thing
thinks,
is, well, they're advertising it right now. This is an Xbox.
right, yeah, but it's clear they want to get out of hardware. In my opinion, it's clear that Microsoft wants to get out of hardware and it no longer wants to be, exclusives,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. But like if Microsoft was going to stay in the hardware game, part of me is like they should have leaned harder into esports. If that's, they're so clearly they've been obsessed with esports, but they've never built a console specifically for esports.
Yeah.
Like they could have done a console that has like 10 gigabit connection, network connection.
Well,
Nobody has that at home yet.
Yeah. Well, Microsoft is so dumb because they had a really successful fighting game franchise that was exclusive and owned entirely by them, and it exceeded all expectations last
And they did
generation.
nothing with it.
They
Yeah.
did nothing with it. I'm talking about Killer Instinct. Like
Yeah, no,
there's like okay, there was
look at what they did to Halo.
and then that's where I was going next. I'm like, and then Halo, and then poor Halo over here, and it's like with Halo, it's just constantly fucking up, and then with Killer Instinct, it's like, oh, this was a success and exceeded expectations, and eh, nothing. Like
I
what? There's so many question marks where it's like, oh, Microsoft wants to do what Microsoft wants to do to make money, and they want Game Pass subscriptions and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, sure, like but like you said, like having a big competitive scene with Halo and Killer Instinct and Forza even or whatever, like but they didn't do anything. They didn't capitalize on nothing. Like
well, it's like design your hardware around what you want the world to look like. So it's like, oh, you could have, oh, it's a wireless controller, but you're the only console that comes out that has like that hyperlink technology. So there's no lag between the controller, even though it's wireless. No input lag. They have the technology to do that, but nobody does it because it's, you don't necessarily need it unless you're a competitive player. You want to lean into competition, be allowing keyboard and mouse for your console players. That's another weird way that they could have done it, you
mhm.
know, ages ago. I think now that you can do that, but like it took forever to get that. And that seemed like an easy win there. Again, you want people to stream games over their home internet, put beefy networking in the back of your, it's like, yeah, okay, you got Wi-Fi and stuff, but you could also have a 5
Mhm.
gigabit, network connection on the back. Yeah, is that overkill for what everybody has at home? Right, yeah, but it's also a marketing gimmick where you can be like, hey, if something's happening with your connection, it's not us. Guaranteed.
It's also
Boom.
future proofing.
Right. They could do things like that. Or they could have. I don't know if they can now. I don't know if it would matter now. But they could have done things like that and made it say like, we're forging our own way. We are going to be the, if you want to play multiplayer games, we're the console that makes multiplayer gaming the best version that you can do.
Yeah. I
We
mean,
compete. Period. They
it,
didn't do that.
yeah, and
You
I
know,
think,
they tried to
also
follow Sony into the AAA gaming
yeah.
space, and like Sony's dominating at that.
Yeah, and it reminds me of what happened earlier the year when Phil said, he was very candid and he was honest when they announced the multi-platform stuff, where it's like we lost the worst generation to lose, which was last generation, PS4, Xbox. That's again, then that's mostly on Don Matrick, but yeah, people built up their libraries on PlayStation.
Right.
But I think in hindsight, like you just were saying there, what their response to it was not was weird, because it was like, okay, well, let's buy a bunch of studios and get our own big AAA games that are going to take forever to come out and whatever. Even though the thing was Sony was, they were in that space because these were already established studios with established teams who've been doing this for a while, and Microsoft came in with very few first party studios and had to sort of buy their way into it. They are literally DC, or I'm sorry, Warner Brothers, when Marvel was taking off and Marvel Avengers 1 was coming out and DC was in WB were like, we need our own, make a Justice League movie right away. And they just scrambled to make a Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and then Justice League on the same year, and just scrambled to get it all out, and it had the same fate. They were scrambling so hard to chase what the competitor was doing because they sat down and established it and built it up. And
Well, yeah, right there. That's the whole thing is they're chasing.
yeah,
They're constantly chasing.
and again,
Yeah.
I agreed, and I agreed fundamentally with Phil. The idea was like, when he took over, it was like, yeah, Xbox has a first party problem. We don't have enough first party studios. We need to go buy some studios. Great idea. Again, Phil's folly was that he and just the people under him didn't manage those projects very well. I also think he bought the wrong studios in some cases. This is going to sound really harsh, but like uh, there were some studios where I'm like, I don't know that buying them was necessarily a great idea.
Well, yeah, I think if we're really gonna get to the crux of it, they bought studios based on the IP the studio was working on, rather than they should have just headhunted talent. Who are the best people in shooters?
Yeah.
Put them on the next Halo. Who are making the best RPGs? Steal those people away. There's no union protections. That means there's not really any, you just you use that to your advantage,
Well,
man. Go headhunt the people. You love The Witcher 3. Go headhunt the people at CDPR that made that great.
apparently
It's not like
there was even a point where they floated an offer apparently to CD Project Red.
right,
I
but
had
that
heard.
wouldn't have got them anything other than Cyberpunk, which was a disaster. What I'm saying is you don't want the executives, you want the talent.
Right.
You know,
You know what? I will say this
not to
too.
say there aren't talented executives. There absolutely are. I'm not trying to like
I don't know. I don't know if it was just because like they just didn't know how to business, or if they just felt they got too burned during 360. They needed to go after Asia way harder than they did.
well, yeah. I mean, that's
Because
part
like
of it is
they needed to go after China, Korea, and Japan, and anywhere else in Southeast Asia that's starting to boom. Like they should have, like Microsoft should have. Like, they have it on. They just got like say Genshin on Xbox now. I'm like Genshin should have been an exclusive, dude. You should
right.
have had a console exclusive for that. Like you should have ran towards that stuff. Like I remember they were like, "Well, we're gonna get a Crossfire game, and we're gonna have like a
Right.
campaign mode for Crossfire." I'm like, "Bro, no, 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 no!" Like, like what you should have done is gone to Korea and China and be like, "Okay, where's like exactly what you said?
Yeah.
Who's the talent? What does the talent want to do?" Let's scoop up the talent. Let's get like the talent to make their next big thing. Let's
And
not go and
get
just
out of their way.
well, it's the other thing. Get out of their way. Well, the other thing too is like, well, Crossfire is really big in South Korea, so let's get Crossfire on Xbox. Let's get a Crossfire campaign. I'm like, forget the idea of the brand or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
or
forget
just like
yesterday's big game. Think about tomorrow's big game. Like I don't
right, because here's the thing. Black Myth Wukong sold 20 million copies in like a month, and it caused a huge like sellout of PS5s in China. Like
right.
tons and tons and tons of people jumped into the PS5 ecosystem in the Chinese market, which is almost entirely untapped because of regulations and many other reasons. But the thing is, like, you could have been there. Like that could have been many years ago. Microsoft could have been the one to jump in and be like, "Yes, this looks like a big thing, a big project. We want to be there when the Chinese console game market explodes. We want to be there when the Korean game console market explodes." We definitely they definitely should have tried to do, because like whatever bridge they burned with Platinum for Scalebound was just like, in the end, it was like, well, it's another canceled project. I went over this. It was like there's like 10, 15 canceled
Yeah.
Xbox One problems. So it's like all these things were just monumental fuck ups on Phil and everyone else's part. Where I'm like, you didn't go after Asia, you didn't go after talent, you went after branding, and you did it all in this we need to chase Sony real hard, and it's like, in hindsight really kind of burned that bridge for them. So I
It,
don't I don't know. In the future, it's kind of like I feel like Game Pass is weird because the idea of putting Blop 6 on Game Pass kind of paid off because it really boosted Game Pass numbers in November. But I'm like, how many people are going to stick around? Um, where because people are already kind of bored, whatever, done with Blob 6 in a way. So here's the thing: I don't know why you're not trying to get the vast library of Call of Duties on your Game Pass. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know why
get
you're
all of
not
them
doing
on
that.
there.
I don't know why you're not doing that. Like it makes no sense to me because everyone's saying that that will cannibalize current day sales, like or mod, sales of Blob 6. I'm like, I don't think it will. I really, really, really don't. Because
Um,
the thing is like it was the best selling game in November for PlayStation was Blob 6.
yeah,
So
I honestly, I don't think it'll cannibalize sales. I think it's two different markets in a way. Like the people who want Game Pass and the people who want to buy the game to have just the game are two different types of consumers.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm just sort of like I'm still sitting here like confused as hell because like people say, well, it's a very tactical marketing rationale behind why they just did Blop 6 and not the other older. I'm like, it's
is
stupid
it?
is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like it's just kind of dumb, honestly. Like when they bought Activision, I thought, oh great, all these classic Activision games, all these Call of Duties, all this. Nope.
Yeah, it
Like,
seems like they're not doing anything. We'll see. It's early to tell on the Activision stuff necessarily, but like they could be just piling things. They could be
yeah.
expanding Game Pass
Well,
like
and I
crazy.
know one of the things is like, okay, all those Guitar Hero games, licensing nightmare. Um,
Yes.
which begs the question, I guess this is just a hypothetical, just sort of like a fun final thought. Will the music rhythm genre ever make a comeback to the levels Guitar Hero Rock Band had?
I say Sony could do it because Sony's already in the music business, but
Mm.
we will have to wait and see. That's our lessons from the last year and the trends we think it'll lead to in 2025 and probably beyond. Uh, maybe we left a couple out.
I
Make
think
this comment.
okay, summarizing it, Nintendo will have a very good year next year.
Mhm.
Because they're finally going to they will eventually be forced to show off the new system one way or another and
Yeah,
release it. I think I personally, Microsoft's going to have a ton of great games coming out next year. It will continue to flounder financially because
I
because their mixed marketing message is all over the place and just it's just going to confuse people not already in the Game Pass ecosystem.
right. Yeah, I think that's true, and I think you're going to see Sony also sort of flounder a little bit.
Actually, yeah, I was going to say I think Sony's actually probably going to have a weird year next year.
It's going to be a strange year because they've got things on the horizon that look really exciting, but not really any confirmation that it's coming
Like,
next year.
yes, go to I'm 130% into Ghost of Yotei, but here's the
Yeah,
thing, I don't know what the hell else Sony is gonna do itself.
unless Intergalactic is going to be a real surprise and come out in 2026. Really, I
Well,
don't know.
again, because everyone's kinda sitting there with GTA 6, everyone's kinda getting out of GTA 6's way, right? And I'm like, I don't think GTA 6 is making it. Steve, the biggest stan in the world for GTA is like, "It's not coming out next year." Like, Steve has already written it off, it's, like, not coming out. I'm most of us are kinda like, "There's no way."
Yeah, it's the biggest maybe in gaming right now is that GTA 6 will come out next year, and even
I
then, will
say
it save the industry?
yeah. Well, I say 30% chance GTA 6 comes out next year, next fall, like it's supposed to.
That's a
Like
solid. Okay, well, we'll know that's going to be the earliest of our trends that we'll know.
I say next year GTA 6 will not come out next year. It'll get pushed to like spring, early summer of 26. Um
I could
and
see
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
could see that.
and I think Sony's actually going to be in a very floundering what do we do kind of way because Astrobot was Helldivers was a big success and then we kind of fucked it up and then Astrobot was a big success and then we had all these just like kind of like not failures but like Conquer was failure but like I don't know I think Sony's going to do worse next year than people probably give them credit for because I
Well,
don't think their game plan is sustainable right now.
the industry in general, I think, is going to be muted over the next year a little bit more than people expect. I think they think 2025 is going to be the big comeback year. I just think it's going to be the muted first year where they're not having to deal with fallout from, 2020, 2021, that
Yeah.
era. And they're not going to be able to blame COVID anymore.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
So
Well, they're gonna have to. Well, they'll never
they
have
will
their.
blame they will blame COVID.
Well,
They're
they'll
not
never have
gonna
their
do
come to Jesus moment where they're like, maybe we shouldn't have laid off so many people.
it. Yeah.
That won't happen.
On that note, we've got patrons to thank. Again, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week was Jade A. Thank you, Jade. And of course, we've got producers to thank. And they are Dragonwolf Makoto, Austenite, Zybernite, Skronami, Croy35, Hyper Viper 89, LCL Mayhem, Ziggy Z. Happy New Year's, and thank you, dudes. We will catch you next time.
Later, dudes.